Bulavinaka, good evening and namaste. You're watching Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. Our guest tonight, we have the Fiji Nursing Association President, Dr. Alisi Vudiniabola, who is here with us, talking about issues. We know there is a real concern on the number of nurses that are leaving Fiji, which has created a major shortage at our hospitals. It is also a major concern that the nurses who are staying back are facing a lot of difficult challenges. We have been speaking to a number of nurses, and as I was preparing and researching for this show tonight, we spoke to many nurses who also have been reaching out to us over the past few years, raising their concerns about their plight, about what they are going through in trying to serve us, the people of Fiji, when we are going to the hospitals and health centers. What has caused it? What can be done about it? What are our nurses going through? And what we as a nation should be calling for, including calling on our government to act, and to act swiftly and urgently to ensure that we do not continue to go on a downward spiral, which already is very concerning. Doctor, thank you very much for accepting our invitation this evening on behalf of our users and listeners. Now, how many nurses do we have in the country, and how many are members of the association?
Naka Vijay, thank you for having me here. Well, the actual number of nurses that are in the country is not with FNA. FNA only has the number of its members, which is around 1,500. That is an increase of about maybe 45% since after COVID. The country should have at least 4,000 plus nurses to be able to look after its health services. And the actual number of nurses that we have right now is with the Ministry of Health. And the Ministry of Health employs about maybe 90% of its nurses, and the other 10% are distributed to private practitioners or private facilities. Yeah.
All the unions had said that they faced major challenges after the 2006 coup. Laws were brought in, decrees were brought in that affected unions.
Yes.
How are things now in relation to your working with the People's Coalition government compared to the interim government and the Fiji First government?
Well, I think FNA has done a little bit better than the other unions because we are nurses and we look after human lives, and we are, first of all, we are not we are apolitical. We don't really care about the politics of government and all that. We worry about the quality of the care that nurses give to or provide for our people. And when that is compromised, that is when the union comes in, whether there's a coup or there's no coup. I only came into the FNA since 2018, and some of those issues were not, they are historical issues for FNA. Things like transportation of nurses, the safety of nurses in nursing stations, and those things. All those things seem to have been, pushed aside since the 2000 coup, and then the 2006 coup. I think all unions were sort of, because FNA used to be part of the FTUC, and then FNA was told to come out of FTUC and just try and address its own issues with whatever government of the day was there, because nurses need to be here to continue their work. Because during the coup or post-coup, we also lost many nurses and we lost many doctors. So, and that's important for people to know, that FNA has never shied away from speaking out or talking about its issues that are important to the people who provide the care for. Because if we don't, care is compromised, and the people at the receiving end are the population of this country.
Now, Alisi, just in relation to pay. There's just a few days ago, you had your AGM, the health minister is saying the pay issue has been rectified. It's quite horrifying to learn that you've had this issue where nurses have continued to stay on a certain scale and they've worked for over 20 years?
Yeah, it's probably more inhuman. These nurses are, they've worked here, they've dedicated their lives to serving this country. Even if a registered nurse is a staff nurse for 20 plus years, they should be remunerated for providing that, that clinical expertise at that level. Even, a registered nurse or a staff nurse is right at the bottom of the hierarchy of nurses. But they are very important in providing that care. And these are the ones that we lose to overseas countries, We only found out about these discrepancies when we started to look at each of our members, the 1,000 plus members who gave us their pay slips for us to look at, and we hired consultants. We had our members come in and scrutinized everybody's pay, and we found that about 600 to 700 nurses were sitting at step 1 in their band, and they should be at their maximum, step 7, and only four were sitting at level 4, or 6 sitting at level 4. That's really inhuman, and no wonder nurses leave.
And what type of action do you expect people to take who are the decision makers?
Well, they should discipline those people at the Ministry of Health. They have a whole division of people who are qualified in finance, who are paid to be looking at the pays of all these nurses and doctors and everybody. Someone is not doing his or her job. And, it's the people of this country are the ones who are at the receiving end of all these incompetencies that we are allowed to, to continue within the Ministry of Health. And hopefully this new government will make sure that, something is done. Even though this ministry has, this administration has tried to rectify those anomalies and realign the salaries. And what happened on Saturday when the minister came to announce our request to pay our nurses according to their years of experience. I mean, that's good, but it's only one of the issues that the FNA is talking about. Okay, that's just one of them, because Fiji can't continue to lose its nurses. There are many other push factors that are also involved.
Years of neglect, you think, has caused this?
Years of neglect and our tolerance of incompetent people. That's what I would say. Bad leadership. Right? People who are in leadership positions, they need to be competent to practice at that level. And that goes across the whole of the Ministry of Health. You have an incompetent manager in public health, you wouldn't expect the subordinates, to be performing at their best, because the person above them is no better than them. That's what I mean.
What about people saying in the past that, we are looking after our nurses well, and it's just because of greener pastures, that's why they're leaving?
No, it's not greener pastures. We've always maintained that doctors and nurses will leave because of bad leadership. Because money is not the only thing that nurses look to. It's the environment of work. Our nurses, we lost the most number of nurses after COVID. And that's because of the type of environment, the type of treatment, the negligence that they faced, horizontal violence, bullying, and so many other inhumane treatment of our nurses. And that's why we've been telling the ministry, please look after the people that you have, because when you lose somebody at 10 years experience, when you bring in somebody else who who doesn't have the same number of experience. It takes another so many years to, to be able to allow that person to develop. You know?
You talked about bullying. What type of bullying is happening to your members?
Well, at the AGM, not only this AGM, but previous AGMs that we've had, and the FNA is bombarded with reports, emails, and stories of nurses crying on the phone, being bullied by not only their own managers or their own nursing leaders, but by doctors, by even the executive officers who are supposed to be sitting in his office and doing the work to look after these professionals. These are the people who are committing bullying, who are writing bad emails, reporting them, victimizing FNA members. And that's not on. That's disgusting.
12-hour shifts is a major concern for the nurses. It has been raised as a major issue. We have been told that the 12-hour shifts has been in place since 2020. No clear indication on when normal 8-hour shifts will resume. Yeah. And the nurses at the time were told, according to the nurses who have spoken to me, that it was a temporary measure. Yes. What is being done about this 4 years on?
Yes, I think what we think as an association is that the government is not telling the people of Fiji that there is a nursing crisis, and it's becoming normal for us to be living in this kind of crisis. And that's dangerous, because it's dangerous for our people, dangerous for for nurses. It's not safe for them, it's not safe for the recipients of their care. The 12-hour shift is correct. It was supposed to be a temporary measure post-COVID. I remember that when the government wanted to take off we were talking about the 12-hour shifts, and the government was going to take it off in, when was it, 2021, I think. Some hospitals in the Western Division, I know Singatok Hospital is one of them, that was really, I think it was working at about 30% of its HR staff, its nursing staff. They only had a few nurses there, and it was just impossible to have 3 shifts in 24 hours. So the nurses themselves opted to have the 12-hour shift for themselves, for that particular hospital, because at least they would have one person looking after the hospital during the day and another one in the night. But the other hospitals, they were supposed to have gone back to 8 hours. And then the nurses started leaving. It started leaving, and instead of the government trying to do something about the drainage of resource or nurses, they continued with the 12-hour shifts. What the association wanted the government or any employer who wants to use the 12-hour shift is to meet the requirements of the 12-hour shift, which is a provision of a room away from the ward, a bed for nurses to lie down or raise their legs, have a rest, a place for refreshments, and the employers are supposed to supply the refreshments and so forth. But nothing. The government has not really done anything. When we inquire, they tell us, "Oh, you've got a space here for them to, to sit and relax." And after maybe a week or so, that space is taken up again by something else. And that has been happening. And up until now, we've been telling the government to stop or review the 12-hour shift. If they need to close some wards, they need to close the wards. Just use whatever available resources and, provide quality care instead of just allowing this 12-hour shift to continue, because nurses are getting sick.
Sick and tired?
Sick
Definitely
and
tired.
They are tired. We've, every AGM we read the names of our nurses that have passed on during the year, and our list continue. Like every AGM, the list just increases and it increases, and it's just crazy to say the least. It's as if we are talking to trees or people who have nothing in their heads.
What do you expect the Ministry of Health to do? What do you expect the current minister and this government to do?
There are temporary measures that the government can do. They can ask for help from their bilateral partners, foreign governments. Some countries in the Pacific or in Asian Pacific region, Japan, they have many nurses. They are not losing. They are not really feeling the effects of this global movement of nurses because they have a lot. And Japan, Korea, and all these countries, they speak English. Their nursing training is quite good, and they can come in and work. They're very experienced people. They work in public health. They work in at least to relieve us of the current crisis in nursing. But I think the problem here is that the government has not really, told the people of Fiji that we have a crisis. I don't know why. I don't know why they have not really declared that we don't have enough nurses to look after the people of Fiji. And, we are only looking at the hospital. Yeah? We are only looking at the hospital. We are not really looking at what's happening outside the hospital. We are wondering why there's so many epidemics. Previously controlled infections are coming almost every week. You have measles, you have typhoid, you have, so many...
All the NCDs, HIV/AIDS.
Yeah, those are the things that we know. But the ones that used to be controlled, we don't even know how many active TB, tuberculosis cases that are roaming the streets, that are drinking kava, together with people who are oblivious to their condition. That's something that never used to happen before. The nurses would know the active TB cases who need to be hospitalized, who need to be isolated or to be treated, but not anymore.
What is the feedback from the nurses regarding this, knowing that this is continuing without any solution in sight for now?
The feedback from nurses? Well, you just look at the number of nurses that leave, right? Every week we continue to lose nurses going to SPEN. Some of them don't even leave the country. They just go down to SPEN. Right? And nurses are not very good in voicing their concerns. Right? Most of them will just continue to work, continue to give until they have had enough. They'll just leave. Right? Yeah.
You're watching Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. We'll be back after this break.
Wait, where am I?
Oh, you died, bro.
I'm dead? But why?
Gori, that's what happens when you change your playlist when you're driving?
Crashed.
What? No, this can't be happening. I had so much left to do in life. All I do is stare at my phone because I'm Gen Z and we're all anti-social.
Oh.
And I wish I did so
Poor guy.
much. But by the way, do you guys have Wi-Fi up here?
This is why you should have listened to F96 Drive. Shouldn't have been playing on music.
And you just drive.
No! I can't believe this is happening. It wasn't
When you're
even
done,
my car and I didn't have
Hell is
car
that way,
insurance.
eh?
Wait, what?
Bring it back, bring it back, bring it back.
Puluvinaka, I'm Vijay Narayan. Thank you for making Fiji Village your #1 media website. This is based on the latest independent Tablet survey results. And Google Analytics also puts us as having average monthly page views as high as 3 million. Here at Fiji Village, we stand with you during the good times and dreadful ones, in moments of joy and moments of sorrow, in the darkest times and during our biggest triumphs and celebrations, when you need a helping hand or when you just need to be heard. We stand for truth, integrity, fairness, and justice. We aim to deliver the most balanced, fair and factual news to you. We are here for you and always will be. And stay tuned, the all-new Fiji Village app is coming soon. Welcome back. You're watching Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. Our guest tonight, the President of the Fiji Nursing Association, Dr. Alisi Vudiniabola. And Alisi is talking about concerns and actually has said that we have a nursing crisis in Fiji that needs to be urgently addressed. First of all, acceptance by the government, and then making sure that we take urgent steps. We will continue to raise this issue as we go along. Now, Alisi, we continue to get the comments that there's a mass exodus of nurses. We have gathered that at the CWM hospital in particular, nurses are leaving in droves, and that is also resulting in increased workload for the remaining staff. How serious is this?
Well, it's if the nurses themselves are reporting those exodus of their colleagues, then it's quite serious, because at the FNA we receive first-hand information from all our members. We have branches, we have leaders in those branches who continue to inform us of anything that concerns them, and that's quite true. And because the CWM hospital is quite a big hospital, those any mass exit of its staff, say for example if even five or seven nurses leave in 1 week, that's quite a lot for CWM. CWM is a base hospital that looks after quite a big chunk of Fiji's population. We know that for some time the operating theatres, where say the operating theatres, the emergency, accidents and emergency, critical care units, the neonatal unit, these are very specialized units which requires experienced clinical experts to work in. And it's not easy to place anyone from any part of the hospital into those areas. And we've noticed that CWM, or what we know as an association, CWM's operating theatre within 1 month lost so many, or probably most of 95% of its regular staff who have been there for around maybe an average of 4 or 5 years, because some have left before. When you have an operating theatre that loses its nursing staff, the experts, the experienced ones, they can't have operations, because the new nurses that were brought in from another department, they have to be orientated. Even though they can work in there, they have to be orientated. They need to be shown how things are done, and then they can start working again. During the process, we lost their sister in charge, because she was sick and she just could not leave work. She just continued to work and stayed on during the weekend in her office, because she could not get in any more senior staff to be on call. That's how serious it is.
Where is this nurse now?
Which one?
This one who was
the sister in charge?
Yes.
She passed away. She passed away at work in the ICU, which is just next door to operating theatre. We buried her last year. That's how serious things are at the hospital. They have to bring in nurses from the emergency department or the outpatient and put them in operating theatre. And by Friday, another lot from operating theatre resigned. And That's how fast the turnover has been from last year in CWM. And, from that time until now, we know that nurses continue to leave. I don't really know what's happening to them. I mean, if I were in the hospital, I would close down some of the wards and just use, concentrate care in some other parts of the hospitals. It's just, it's just inhuman to expect nurses or the people that are coming to the hospital to be looked after by nurses who are not experienced in certain areas.
So you said that there's a number of 800 nurses that have left. For what period is that?
That was, I think it was 2022, 23 period up to, I'm not sure. There's so many.
And the latest statistics would be much more than 800.
Yeah, that's what I think. Because by, towards the end of last year to Feb this year, we counted from FNA. We counted that we lost around 300, and but that's only the FNA. We don't know about those who are not members of the FNA, because not everyone in Fiji is member of FNA.
The other issue is what are the best global practice for the nurse to patient ratio.
Yeah.
From the ground, the nurses are telling me, for example, for CWM children's ward, it comes to even 1 nurse to 15 patients at the moment.
Yeah.
Is nursing care being compromised based on what we do?
Yeah, best practice depends on the various units. If it's critical care, say for example children's ward, then it should be less. Or children's, if it's general or medical, then it could be around 1 to 6 or 1 to 5. When it comes to very sick children, you probably need 1 nurse to 1 or 1 to 2, and that's the same for critical care units and other ICUs.
So nowhere 1 to 12 or 1 to 15.
No, that's dangerous. That compromises the quality of care. Yeah.
I've also got comments from nurses, quite a few nurses, and you've highlighted this. It may have been discussed in your meetings, about the 12-hour shifts continuing. You still just have 1 hour break, and this is from some nurses that they do not have proper beds for nurses to rest during their breaks, and nurses have to make do with lying on benches and even the floor during the night shift.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. FNA is aware of all those issues, and that's why we've been calling on the Ministry of Health to please put a stop to these 12-hour shifts. We are aware that some nurses are working 5 to 6 straight days doing 12-hour shifts. The 12-hour shift, the roster is supposed to roster nurses for 3 days, and they should have at least 3 days off, and then they work for another 3 or 4 days, and then they would have another few days off. But because of the shortage, some nurses are not taking a full day off, or they wouldn't take 2 days off. They are rostered to come back on the 2nd day and the 3rd day, and then start off with their 3 days of normal roster again, which gives them 5 days of work. So it's not safe for them. It's not safe for patients. It's it's not good for the human body to be constantly working, and it's draining, and I think it's contributing to the high sick rates for nurses. Yeah.
How long have you been raising this issue?
We've been raising it since after COVID. We told them to please review the 12-hour shifts. Places like Raki, places like Tavua, and all those, even Nabua, they complain of no meals. Neserlangi, which is a maternity hospital, it's not a big place, but nurses are delivering, midwives go there to deliver babies, and nurses are working there. They work 12-hour shifts. They have no meals. They don't claim, and they claim meal allowance, they're not given. They're told that they are not entitled to meal allowances and so forth. Raki Hospital is the same, and many other hospitals is just the same.
The other issue I've learned from the nurses that we've been talking to is that they are even buying certain supplies that are not in the hospital. Shortage of supplies like needles, syringes, linen. A worst case scenario, sometimes nurses are using curtains to cover beds. How is this being addressed? How long has this been going on for?
We've that has been I think that has been an issue with not only procurement but also with hospitals, with the Ministry of Health, franchising or putting out those services like the laundry. Outsourcing. Those services have been outsourced to the public, and I think that's the main cause of problems for all those, the shortage of linen especially, because there is a company that does the linen, the laundry and all that for the hospitals, and it's causing a lot of problems, and that's why you don't have enough bed sheets. Since the laundry caught fire some time ago, I think the government has outsourced the laundry to private companies. But in saying that, the FNA in one of our, I think it was one of our informal meetings with the minister, we told him to take back that outsourcing, because that's the main cause of problem to the hospitals that are using that particular service. Nurses, the bed sheets are all torn when they come back. They are dirty. They come back. They are not cleaned properly. We don't know who's assessing that company, that it's using the correct detergents, the correct way of washing the linen, and it's hospital linen, and that brings a whole lot of questions. So the ministry should try and assess or evaluate that decision and do something about it.
And do something urgently.
Yeah, that's something that should have been done, because I think it was last year when we told the Minister for Health to think about that, because that's a main cause of the problems with the linens in the hospital. Now our hospital is worse.
What about nurses buying some of the supplies for their patients because they feel for the patients, and they even things down to syringes and needles, etc.?
Yeah, patients. I know that we are aware of that. That patients are expected to purchase their needles. When they are given these IV drugs, they need to be pushed into a chamber, and if they don't have chambers, the patients are asked to purchase from the pharmacy. Nurses have often purchased those things for patients, or they won't. I met a few nurses in New Zealand who came back with loads of those stuff to bring to their wards for their patients.
Try to help the patients who cannot afford.
Whatever we can get from others, we bring in for to ease their loads and so forth. But I know patients in the surgical wards are asked to buy their plaster, the tape, micropore to use for their dressings. They're even asked to buy their dressings.
When did this start, that they have to buy even simple supplies like that?
It's been going on, I think, before COVID. Those things have been, we know that they were happening, and patients were asking, why are we buying this? We're buying needles. Patients who have to have 5 days of injection, they're told to go and get they're given a prescription to go and buy the syringes and needles. And this is a government hospital. I don't know why we are doing all this. So where is the money that is supposed to be purchasing those for public hospitals going to?
But we keep hearing that more money is allocated to the health ministry in the budget.
That's why I said we better look at the Ministry of Health and who's doing all those budget, who's receiving all those money, who's in the procurement division of the Ministry of Health.
What is the state of the maternity hospital? We've heard horrific stories about how our mothers, new mothers, are being treated. nurses definitely are seeing that from the nurses' perspective. Are you concerned on what our mothers are going through?
We are concerned about everything in the hospital. Sometimes we are just looking at the general hospital, we forget about the maternity unit. Because the maternity unit is supposed to be the clean part of the hospital, because mothers come in to deliver babies. And what we know is that the delivery suites, the ceilings were falling off, and at one stage, I think it was early this year, that a mother and baby, they were just missed by a falling piece of the ceiling, almost injuring both of them. But apart from that, there are other, I think those horrific stories, I think the public already knows. And what the FNA was more concerned about was the fact that, in emergencies, some of those mothers have to be carried, when the lifts were not working, mothers had to be carried by the nurses and the security down the step, or would be taken right across to the other side of the hospital, the old, this part of the hospital, the old medical wards. Over
so the lift is not working?
Yeah, when the lifts were not working.
Lifts are not working.
But that's the only lift that was working at that time. So they would bring the mother right down to that side.
Carrying her because
and
then had to get wheelchair, etc.
Yeah, and then wheel them right across to outside and then to the other side of the hospital to get into theatre. And these are laboring mothers. And it's just amazing how, how people have endured all these kind of dangerous contexts to work in. It's just, we are not allowed to lift heavy objects, even half your weight. You're not supposed to be doing that. But nurses are lifting heavy patients, lifting heavy objects, and yeah, it's just inhuman, and I don't really want to talk about all those dangerous stuff. Yeah.
The risk allowances are being raised as an issue that were not paid or considered for the nurses who worked in COVID bubbles. We know you highlighted the serious concerns during COVID. No medical screening for personnel before being deployed to these bubbles, and even some staff dying during COVID. They contracted it while at work.
Yeah.
Of course, lessons learned there, but what were the trying circumstances back then?
Well, first the nurses, in 2020, that was post-COVID, after the first bout of COVID-19 pandemic. Many nurses were not paid their allowances, the risk allowance. The only nurses that used to be paid their risk allowances were the ones working in St. Giles. But during COVID, we started because everybody else working in the front line were being paid their risk allowance, except for the nurses. So we started to ask, why are the nurses not compensated? Why aren't they seen as just part of a routine, part of government work? Because these are human beings, and they are contracting COVID, they are isolated. They come out of isolation, they go straight into work. No screening, nothing is done to them, because they probably don't have enough kits to use on the nurses. They just allow them to go. But that's only one of the issues. During COVID, the first pandemic, the fear of the unknown amongst nurses was quite, it was just horrific to find nurses coming down in tears to the FNA to come and ask for support, for PPEs, for sanitizers, for gloves, gowns.
Which were being not provided by
the government.
Ministry of Health.
No, they were not provided all those stuff. The government was more concerned with protecting the doctors. They were not supplying anything for the nurses. The nurses were told to find their own.
Find their own masks, their own
PPEs.
Gloves, etc.
Yeah. So we found a few nurses who were not even members of the association came crying to us to look for us to support them. And that's when FNA took an active step. And because we were not going to have an AGM, we usually set aside around 80 to 100,000 for our annual general meeting. So we decided to use the 80,000 to help our nurses, our members. So we purchased a lot of PPEs, sanitizer and packs and all those stuff. We packed them and then we distributed them to all our branches. We also bought, we bought urns, we bought refreshments, packs and stuff for all our branches in Fiji, microwaves and things. And we donated 10,000 to the Prime Minister's relief fund, in good faith, because we knew that the government was looking for money to. But the nurses were never even considered by the Ministry of Health to be worthy of being protected against COVID. I don't know what's in their heads. I think it was the most trying time for the FNA and for the nurses because of that fear, and nobody knew much about COVID at the time when when we first had COVID. Families were, frightened, children, and the government was sort of, just behaving as if it was a big a comedy show to the people of Fiji, that we were in this emergency and the doctors are here, the doctors need to be protected, apart from everybody else. And that was really crazy. And the nurses were not even compensated. They did not get their risk allowances. When we asked for risk allowances, it took so long. It doesn't have to come from the association.
Have they been paid now?
I don't think so, because most of them have gone away. Most of those who were involved in the COVID in Fiji have left.
And for those who are still here, we have asked the Ministry of Health to ensure they get paid?
Most of them have asked, Vijay. That's why they ended up with the FNA. Yeah.
You're watching Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. We'll be back after this break.
Breakfast with Budana Penny and Tifa. Good yanders.
It's 21 past 7 and it's Turned Up Tuesday. Turned up.
Good youngers, let's go. Hey! Hi! We just wanted to take this moment to say a big binakawakalu
For making us the #1 radio station in Fiji.
Your sport is the world's most.
Thank you for listening in day after day.
I like listening to Breakfast on FM 96. I love all the songs that they play, and FM 96 is one of them.
We love FM 96.
FM 96.
Our number one.
One thing that draws me to FM 96 is that the content is relatable. They do play all the music that I love.
Part of FM 96 is listening to Penny the Pensaris. And they make fun about my forehead because it shines brighter than the day.
And you have made us a part of your daily routine.
And we couldn't be more grateful.
Because you make what we do worth it.
Thank you for making us #1 in Fiji!
Get ready to elevate your event with Total Event Company's top-notch gear hire services. From a stunning 12 by 12 meter adjustable stage and impressive 13 by 13 meter production roof, we've got your event covered. Our gear can fit any venue, big or small. Need tents? We offer 3x3 meter pagodas, 6x3 meter tents, and a grand 15 by 30 meter marquee tent. Turn your vision into reality. Choose Total Event Company for gear that makes your event shine. Visit the Total Event Company Facebook page or dial 3314-766 to get in touch with us.
Welcome back. You're watching Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan, and our show tonight is focusing on the nursing crisis in our country, the hardship that our nurses are facing. Fiji Nursing Association President talking about all the issues that our nurses are going through, and things really getting worse during COVID and even post-COVID. Some of the issues still lingering and getting worse as well. Days off, you highlighted days off, very important when you're doing 12-hour shifts, as you said. And first of all, does the shift end at 12 hours, or some nurses are expected to stay on?
Well, the shift should end at the end of the 12 hours, and some nurses are expected to be called back if someone is sick. Usually if there is a rostered overtime and the person who's rostered to come into overtime gets sick, then the person who has just completed the shift is expected. Yes, usually is expected to come back or stay on or take a break and then come back and start again at a certain time. But that is one of the problems. The nurses have most of us have done overtimes, and it's okay to be called back and work because you need to look after, somebody needs to be there. But the problem with the kind of overtime is the process. Like, nurses are really getting fed up of doing the overtime and then having to justify the overtime to a medical officer who has to verify and sign off the overtime form before it's sent to Ministry of Health. That is where the real problem is, and that's why nurses are bringing this up as something that needs to stop. Either they stop the overtime, get more nurses in, or find a better way to process the other overtimes that they do, because it's contributing to their frustration, and they're working without being compensated at the right time. Some of them wait for 3-4 months to get paid their overtime.
And you have the day off issue as well.
Yes. Like I said, some of them are working 5 or 6 straight days because they are called back for the 2 days and then they have to work again for their 3 days.
There's also issues being raised about working with faulty machines or machines not working at all, lack of basic equipment. We talked about supplies, but we're also talking about equipment. At one stage, there was a word that only 2 out of 8 operating theatres were working. Makes the work harder for the nurses as they have to run around looking for things. What are the nurses telling you about this?
Yeah, it's just, it's really crazy. What we can understand is why the big hospital like CWM has to have those kind of problems with the equipment, when you have other private smaller hospitals who have no problems with those kind of stuff. And this big hospital, half the time their MRI or their some of those big machines are not working, and they have to send patients away and pay big money for those things. Even the smaller machines that nurses work with, they don't have them. Most of the time nurses have to purchase their own. They even buy thermometers. I remember one of our sisters, a nursing sister before, had to close a ward because there was no thermometer. In those days, in the 80s. And these days it's becoming a normal thing for nurses to purchase their own equipment. They buy their own stethoscopes, they buy their own sphygmomanometer, which is used for measuring blood pressure. Navua Hospital doesn't have many of them equipment that they're supposed to have. You know, they are supposed to do their blood tests, their X-rays and things in a hospital like Nabua. But patients have been sent to Suva, sent to the private laboratories here to do their workups here, and then take their results back to Nabua for the doctors to have a look and then treat them. How cumbersome is that? Tiresome. And sometimes patients probably die on the road, and nobody worries about them. And the same thing is happening here in CWM.
And it's pure lack of management or bad leadership?
It's bad leadership, it's poor management, it's people, occupying positions who are, who are wrong in that position, who are not qualified to be sitting there. I don't know what the public service is doing about it. They should be, evaluating and checking on the performances of these people.
A proper performance review.
Yeah.
You teach nursing as well?
Well, I teach nursing. I've been a teacher from 1988.
You know these are trying circumstances when you teach when you're teaching nurses now. What are you telling them, knowing that when they get out into the world, this is what they'll see when they're on the ground?
It's like it's like we're teaching our nurses to practice in mass. That's what one of my graduates told me. You taught me all this in the school, but when I came to the hospital, it's as if I walked into a different place. I wasn't aware that this hospital doesn't have anything. We don't have all those things that you told us about. We can't even practice nursing the proper way that we were taught, because we just don't have the equipment. We can't do a proper sterile dressing because we don't have enough. We don't have a kidney dish. We don't have enough forceps. You have to use one tray for so many patients. And that's not right. That's not what we teach our nurses.
Now, issues been raised about nurses as they're working extra hours, issue about sick leave, that if they call in sick, managers think that they are not genuine, then they start counselling them. Again, there's some hospitals, they're saying the nurses are being counselled unnecessary for calling in sick. Most would rather come to work sick and get sent back to prove that they are sick. And staff are scolded for resting or sleeping during their breaks. Are you getting these complaints from your members?
Yeah, those complaints come to FNA, and we have investigated. We know those things are happening, that nurses are bullied to come to work. They get told off in meetings. They are shamed during meetings. Nurses try and shy away from reporting sick because they don't want to be seen as just habitual sick people who try to feign sick leaves and so forth. And another report that came to us was CWM using a new policy for sick leave, which the Permanent Secretary himself, the current PS, was not aware of, which is the validity of a sick leave. A sick sheet that is given by a doctor is only valid for 8 hours. That's the first time we ever heard of that kind of, I don't know.
Just for that shift. So if it's past the 8 hours, they expect you to come back to
be
work.
Called back to work. So that was.
So has this policy been taken away?
Well, we have reported it in one of our mitigation meetings with a team from Ministry of Health, and the PS himself is not aware of that because we don't even know whether, it's legal or not. Someone is just implementing something that they just want to do, just to get nurses to come back and work. So so those kind of things happen.
What is your message to people? I think it's an eye-opener for many who may not know all these things. What's your message to those members of the public who say, okay, you took up the noble profession, you expected to just toughen up and just handle this? What's your message to those people watching this tonight?
Well, the thing is, nurses are also human, just like them, and it's not... if you're talking about remuneration, that's fine, that's okay, because we don't really worry about remuneration. It's a context of care that affects the quality of what we do. If nurses work for 12 hours without rest, without proper nourishment, proper rest in between those hours, and it's not safe for that person because she's a human as well, and it's not safe for the people that they look after, and it's not good for their families and their lives. I think it's important that the public also has an interest in how their care is being delivered, because ultimately they are going to be at the receiving end of this service. Okay, so that's how I would address it, and that's important.
Question about St. Giles Hospital. We see the numbers increasing. That's the only psychiatric hospital in the country, and there is a real concern about drug addiction, young people getting into all sorts of things, substance abuse. How are the nurses coping at the St. Giles Hospital?
Yeah, St. Giles is probably one of the best run hospitals by its head, its director. It's going through the similar kind of shortage, the crisis. They have trained orderlies who help out in their work, but it's also very crowded because of the relapses in their mentally ill patients, and then they have this influx of younger patients who are drug addicts. And the nurses have good. I don't know how they're doing it, but they are really working within themselves, within their resources, to be able to look after their patients well. But the fact remains that they are also very short, and not many nurses will go to work in St. Giles because of the context of work there is very critical. It's high level of thinking and all the stuff. It's a high-risk place to work in. It has become crowded. It's a very old facility. One of the problems that we find over there, and we have taken this to the Ministry of Health meetings, is the fact that the walls are crumbling down, and patients are walking in. They just have to, just step over the wall. This is towards the back of the hospital. Those concrete walls are falling off. And patients just go there and push one of the blocks off, and they just step out and walk around Sova, and then probably go back or never go back. And that's very unsafe, because some of those patients are quite violent. They are on treatment. We have various different other patients there who are supposed to be in, and it's overcrowded.
And you have your nurses who are definitely, no doubt, pulling shifts if you have issues there.
Yeah, the nurses are working just as hard as CWM, but because I think their management is quite good, the nursing management is quite good, we do not really hear most of the same problems as the ones that we have from CWM and other smaller hospitals.
You talked a lot about people working extra hours, things not changing, 8 hours shift hardly heard of. It was stated as 12 hours will be temporary but hasn't gone back. The issue of staff burnout and stress, is there anything offered by the Ministry of Health as an employer to deal with it?
I think after COVID, the Ministry of Health employed a company that was doing counseling for nurses. But we also have other resources within the mental health in St. Giles, nurses who also do counseling. But for stress and for such, for recommendations for counseling, is not there. I don't think there's anything that the ministry has actually done for nurses now. It was only that time when the government was offering the services of I think, was it Pacific can't remember the name of that private company that provides counseling. Yeah, and
issue about, I'll still stay on mental health as one of our last questions with the long hours. You said appalling state. Then you frontline carers, where the patients are coming and some are in desperate need of things, and you know that some of your members are trying their best, but they falling short in their service delivery, not because of their own issues, but because of things not available, mentally draining for them, exhausting at the same time, and unable to provide the best care. Do you think they should be flowing on to their families in terms of their issues, because they're taking a lot of stress home there? Issues that some nurses have said it affects their family, their kids, their social life, their further education, just because they're too exhausted from everything.
Yeah.
What are you hearing from them?
It's it's obvious, and everybody knows the flow-on effect of stress from nurses, and not only nurses, doctors as well. I think at the height of COVID, when Wanganambete and his troops from the Ministry of Health started mobilizing nurses from Lambasa to Lutoka, to Suva, rotating them as if he was just rotating a box of goodies. They would spend hours or weeks in isolation after their work in front lines, and then send them back to work or go home, go back to work. We had many broken families. We had domestic abuse, violence. We had not only with nurses but with doctors, because all of them went through the same thing. And that has continued. And in a normal nurses' work shift, if you work and you're exposed to that kind of work environment, you carry that home. And sometimes it's not safe for the nurse, and it's not safe for husbands, for children. And we know that nurses report a lot of violence, not really violence, but domestic abuse, and nurses wanting to stay away from their home for a while and until things cool down, or husbands marching up to the hospital to look for their wives because they have not come home and they're still at work. Those things are very, they are a state of affairs that we don't really talk about a lot. It's something that most of us, even for myself, we have that, and we try to sort them out. And if I myself, who only teaches and goes home, can carry this kind of burden, what about those who, apart from delivering care, and they also have to look for things to use during their care, and then you're looking after 24, 25 patients on your own. And when you are late, you are not concentrating, or when you fail to do something, and the patients or the relatives or the doctors go for you, you carry all those kind of trauma home with you. And because we are humans, and it, you affect your family. It affects how you respond to your spouse, how you respond to your children. You become the other person yourself. You become very unreasonable. You say bad things, and you say things out of context, and so forth. And it's quite traumatic for nurses. Yeah.
Alisi, just before we finish off with the show, what is your message to those watching the show tonight? You've already said the country, the government needs to accept clearly that we have got a nursing crisis in Fiji. We cannot keep saying that, see, we've got nurses leaving, don't worry, we've got everything under control. What is your message to the people out there?
Well, my message is that, we need to look after our nurses, the ones that we have. There is a crisis in Fiji that, even though government has not really acknowledged it, but for us at the FNA, we know that there is a nursing crisis. And there are so many historical issues that nurses are trying to cope with and trying to sort with the government. We are trying to look for ways to look after them, to make sure that wherever they work, whether it's in the urban centers or in the islands, they need to be safe. They need to work in well-prepared, well-maintained quarters and clinics. Nurses need to be provided with safety equipment to work with. Maritime island nurses don't have safety equipment supplied. Nurses have to swim with their patients across. A few months back when boat capsized, and lucky there was no loss of life. I asked the public to look after their nurses and look after where they live and practice, and also to be vocal, to speak out when you find some of our work is lacking in what we are supposed to deliver. If we are lacking in the quality of what we supposed to provide, then it's the public who is supposed to tell us to speak out and speak up, because it's no longer safe, it's no longer good enough just to be quiet like most Fijians and just be accepting of everything that we are being provided by the Ministry of Health or by the government, because that's government's responsibility, is to provide safe nursing or health service. Yeah.
As the Fiji Nursing Association President Alisi Vudiniabola, thank you very much for coming on our show tonight and speaking openly about the issues that matter. You have been at the front line raising these issues. Sometimes, as you've said, you don't know whether people understand the seriousness of the issue and what's going through, and that urgent steps are needed. No doubt we will be reaching out to the Ministry of Health, asking serious questions, even to the Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, including the Minister for Health, on what is the plan going forward in relation to these crises and what can be done. Until next week, have a great evening.